Today we're going to talk about where the native Texans are today. Many of the Indians in Texas died of disease once the Spanish and French explorers came to Texas. The Spanish and French explorers brought measles, smallpox, and whooping cough and other diseases that the Indians were not used to and totally unprepared to fight. So thousands and thousands of Indians died because of these new diseases. However, the diseases did not completely wipe out the Indian tribes of Texas. The Indians continued to live in Texas until people from the United States began moving into Texas. When this happened, the people from the United States and the Indians of Texas began to battle over the land. We'll talk about later this year exactly what those battles were and how all of that happened. But for right now, I want you to know where the Indians ended up. Most of the Texas tribes ended up living on reservations in Oklahoma. This is a map of Oklahoma, and you can see where the tribes have land that belongs to them. Here's the Tonkawa. They have a very tiny reservation there today that belongs to them. The Kiowa, Comanche, and Apache have reservations in this area, where the Caddo and Wichita have a small area here. Those lands belong to those Indians still today. If you went to these places today, you wouldn't see teepees and beehive houses and the things that we've talked about. They live in houses just like we do, and you really wouldn't be able to tell them apart from anyone else. However, maintaining their historical culture is very important to all of these tribes, and many of them worked to make sure that their traditions are not forgotten. You may have noticed that these Indians were not listed as having reservations in Oklahoma. That's because they don't. However, the Jumano Indian still lives on a reservation in Oklahoma. That's because they joined the Apache tribe. So many Jumano Apache Indians still live on that reservation in Oklahoma. The Karankawa, Attakapan, and Quiltakians, however, have a different story. These Indians adapted and changed their way of life to live with the other people who moved into Texas. They still have descendants living in Texas and Louisiana and Mexico today, but they do not have their own reservation located anywhere in the United States. They just live in houses and cities and towns just like you and I do. You might be surprised to learn that there are 3 Indian reservations in Texas, but none of the Indian tribes were originally from Texas. Just like all the native Texan tribes that were from Texas were forced to move to Oklahoma, these tribes were forced to move from other places into Texas. The one that's been here the longest is the Alabama Coushatta tribe. There were actually 2 different tribes that joined together and moved from Alabama to come to Texas. They have been in Texas since 1854, and they have a pretty large reservation in the Piney Woods with 890 members. The Kickapoo have a pretty small reservation, but a lot of members. Their reservation is located near Eagle Pass. The Kickapoo were originally from Michigan and Wisconsin. They were a farming and hunting tribe. The Tigwa live near El Paso. They are a group of Pueblo Indians who fled to El Paso when the Pueblo population of New Mexico rose up against the Spanish in 1650. However, they didn't become a recognized reservation until 1968. They have a small reservation almost within the city limits of El Paso. It's only 76 acres, and they have 450 members. A main source of money for all 3 of the tribes is their cultural celebrations they have each year. I have never been to visit any of these reservations, but I think it would be really cool to go and do that. The next thing you're going to do is to get one of the maps of Texas. You're going to color the map to show all of the original tribes that lived in Texas, as well as the current tribes that live on reservations in Texas.